Is Michigan football going to be better this year? Is that even possible? Probably not, but there's an argument to make here. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and a play-by-play announcer. And I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWN for $20 off your first purchase. Michigan this year better than the 15-0 national championship team. We'll discuss. Plus, we have some recruiting news, some good, some bad. And we'll have our power rankings at the end. This one's going to be especially fun. Stick around for that. There are some rumblings around Ann Arbor that this year's Michigan football team is going to be really good, but better than last year's undefeated 15-0 national championship team without Jim Harbaugh, without JJ McCarthy and a bunch of his teammates. They all moved on. They'll be playing on Sundays in the NFL. Probably not. But they can be really, really, really good in 2024. Yes, let's discuss that. I mean, it's the contention here of Locked On Big Ten. The Wolverines will take a small step back from last year, meaning that if they go 11-1 in the regular season, I mean, technically that's a step back from 12-0 in last year's regular season, but they can still be really, really good. It doesn't mean that the cupboard is bare. It doesn't mean that this team cannot compete for a Big Ten title. It doesn't mean that this team cannot compete with Ohio State. It doesn't mean that this team can't be a playoff team for the fourth year in a row, mind you. In fact, it can still reach all of those goals. So let's explore how. What's really going on here? Let's start with Sherrone Moore's thoughts on his linebackers. Okay, Junior Colson and Michael Barrett, they're gone. They're gone to the NFL. That's bad. You don't want to lose guys like that, but it's part of the game. We frequently tell you about how deep Michigan is. And when upperclassmen move on, more upperclassmen step in. It's next man up. Ernest Hausman and Jayshon Barham are the next two men up at linebacker for Michigan. Now, Coach Moore thinks that they will pleasantly surprise a lot of people here in the fall. In fact, Moore has said they're two of the best linebackers in the country. That's a pretty tall order. That's big praise. Hausman's coming off a strong spring, and we told you about Barham before because his story is pretty interesting, actually. As soon as the season was over last year, he was playing for Maryland. But the minute the season was over, he declared he's going to the transfer portal and he was going to go to Ann Arbor and go to Michigan. I mean, it was instantaneous. There wasn't any back and forth. There wasn't any, hey, let's see what else I can get out there. I'm going to Michigan. So he's going to, and they were glad to have him. In 2023, he had 95 tackles for Maryland, 9.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and an interception against JJ McCarthy and Michigan. And you know, McCarthy did not throw many interceptions. I mean, I can think of 4 right off the top of my head. 3 were in one game. That fourth one was Barham against Maryland. So Michigan's formula all along last year was to have a stout defense and a powerful running game. That's not going to change. That's still the deal. That's still the motto in Michigan. In fact, Sherrone Moore will probably double down on that formula this year. Remember when he stepped in for a suspended Jim Harbaugh for the Penn State game, he ran the ball 32 straight times. Running back Donovan Edwards better prepare for a big year. Now, defensively up front, we've talked about their linebackers here a little bit. But let's take a look up front. I mean, you still have guys like Kenneth Grant still coming back. He is an imposing figure at 6'3", 340 pounds. Yeah, he's going to clog some things up the middle. No question about that. He was talking, and he acknowledged that last year's team was uber physical. It was a physical team last year. But he thinks this year's team under Sherrone Moore is even more physical, if you can imagine that. More physical in 2024 than in 2023. He just got done with spring football, and Grant says that Sherrone Moore, the team did a a lot more 11-on-11 contact drills than Jim Harbaugh ever did. It's all about smashing underneath. In fact, Moore's motto is smash. That's the kind of football he wants. That's the motto. Again, he's doubling down on last year's philosophy. Physical, tough football. Going to win games in the Big Ten in the trenches. That's how they're going to do it. That's how they're going to keep doing it. That's how they won a championship last year. If that doesn't conjure up a motto of smash, if that doesn't conjure up visions of physical play on the line of scrimmage, nothing else will. On the other side of the ball, the offensive line, which was nothing short of awesome last year or the last several years, it'll be revamped. But again, it'll be full of upperclassmen. They're full-size grown men that have been waiting for their chance. Some of them have some playing experience. It's not like they're coming in as total novice players on the line of scrimmage. They just weren't starters, or maybe they started spot games here or there. They're huge, giant men, 6'6", 360-plus pounds, ready to go. They're older. They're mature. It's going to be next man up and next round. And I think they're going to be just fine at offensive line. And, of course, with that running game with Donovan Edwards. There are a couple of other intriguing players to keep an eye on this year for Michigan. Amorian Walker. He was recruited as just an athlete at Michigan. Didn't really have a set position. Started off as a wide receiver. Then they toyed with him at corner. Then he said, well, I'm transferring to Ole Miss. But then he immediately came back to Michigan, where he's now going to be a speedy wide receiver, kind of a stretch guy, stretch the defense, take the top off, one of those kind of guys. So look for him to step up with his role this year. They're also excited about a player from Youngstown State, transfer CJ Charleston, a wide receiver. He's got film because while he was at Youngstown State, he played against teams like Ohio State and Michigan State, and the staff was pretty impressed with how he handled himself against the big boys that he'll see on a regular basis. And, of course, those are games at their stadium, at Ohio State, at Michigan State. Handled himself pretty well. They think he'll do pretty well at Michigan. You got returning players like Samaj Morgan, who's ready to take the next step offensively. Don't forget tight end Colston Loveland is still there. And he'll be a comfort blanket for whoever the starting quarterback is. Now, that's the big question. That's the starting quarterback. We got 4 guys to look at here. Alex Orji and Jaden Denigal and Davis Warren and Jack Tuttle. 4 guys. All have interesting skill sets and all are very interesting players. Now, most teams that have question marks going into a season, the question marks at quarterback, that's usually not a recipe for success. I do think the biggest question with this team, of course, is at quarterback. And plus, how are they going to use them? Who are they going to use? Because the way I see it, of those 4 quarterbacks I just mentioned, you got 2 different groups of 2, if you will. Let me explain myself. Orji and Denigal, they're athletes. They can run the ball. We know that Sherrone Moore likes to run the football. And if you can add an element where his quarterback is running, I think that'll be the biggest difference you see between this year's offense and last year's offense with JJ McCarthy, because JJ did just protect him at all costs. He wasn't going to run the ball. Then there's Warren and Tuttle. These guys are pocket passers. And plus Tuttle's got 7 years, 7th year of college football. He's allowed to play one more year. So, I know right before I came on here today, I double-checked their depth chart. Denigal's listed as 4th. Orji's 1st, Denigal's 4th. But I wonder if Orji becomes the starter, does that make Denigal the number 2 backup? Because then the offense wouldn't have to really change that much philosophically if one quarterback replaced the other one, because they can kind of do some of the same skills and kind of be part of a running game. The same could be said if Warren, for example, is the starter. Maybe, would Tuttle be his backup because it'd be more of a pocket passing attack, if you will. Or there's a third option, of course. Will Sherrone Moore go back and forth between Orji and Warren? Kind of a frequent change of pace. One passing quarterback, another running quarterback. I mean, that's how Orji was used last year, very sparingly, I might add, but he was used that way with JJ McCarthy, coming in every once in a while for change of pace, run things a little bit. Maybe they do the same thing to a larger scale this year. But I actually think this is one of the more fascinating stories in the Big Ten, this summer quarterback battle at Michigan and how things play out. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. And I think we're going to explore these dynamics. I'm sitting here talking about, I'm thinking about it. I think we're going to do some more on this on our podcast over the summer. I think it's a fascinating topic. But back to my original point, when we're talking about what to expect for this football team moving forward, this team's pretty good. This team's pretty good. Arguably, some facets of the team may actually be a little bit better or just as good as last year. But they're only going to go as far as the quarterback room will take them. I think that's a no-brainer. That's established. That's the storyline for Michigan football this year. And look, one of these guys shows some improvement from last year. One of these guys pops out there a little bit, surprises some people. Then you may really have something at Michigan this year. Wolverine fans, what do you think? Hit me up. You can hit me up on Twitter or X at Talk Big Ten number 10. Don't forget comments on YouTube. Those should be good today. And also our website, talkbig10 number 10.com. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. Get in the club here. We talk Big Ten every day. Don't miss out. Subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free. It's free. It's free. No other information is required. No other personal information. You just click a button. And you get our podcast each and every day. Get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Audio-only versions come out. If you listen on audio only at 4 a.m. Eastern, video on YouTube comes out at 6 a.m. Eastern every single day. We're back on the recruiting trail. Some good news and some bad news, plus our power rankings all coming up in just a minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. You want to go to games? Then get Game Time. Get the Game Time app. You get tickets to everything, especially right now. We got the NBA Finals going on. You want to go to the finals in Dallas? Or if this thing goes back to Boston, get the tickets at Game Time on the Game Time app. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. They got killer last-minute deals on all prices, all-in prices, views from your seat. You see the view of the ticket you're about to buy right there on your phone. So you know it's a good view of the event. And they have their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And don't forget, they have their last minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports. And in addition to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, if it has a ticket, you get it on Game Time right there on your phone. It is easy. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. And you can create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and the redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day. Thank you very much for that, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, again, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, and you can get that subscribe on YouTube, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget our website, talkbig10 number 10.com, with all sorts of information, merchandise. All of our podcasts are all archived there. Go back and check out another one right after this one. So all that is right there. Again, it's talkbig10 number 10.com. Look, we can debate whether it's okay to leave a school to go to a rival school, whether you're a player or a coach or administrator. It happens. Some people get bent out of shape about it, though. But Michigan coach Sherrone Moore has hired Ohio State assistant athletic director for football recruiting and events, Eric Dunston, as Michigan's new director of football ops. By the way, he replaces Christina DeRuther, who left to go follow Jim Harbaugh to Los Angeles to work for the Chargers. This is the second time that Moore has hired a Buckeye, by the way. Earlier this year, he hired Ohio State running backs coach Tony Alford, who spent 9 years in Columbus. So Big Ten football coaches, they're having their meetings, the Big Ten coaches meetings out in California. Big Ten Network caught up with first-year Indiana coach Curt Cignetti. And the big question around Bloomington is, like, how quick can Sig turn things around? You know, Indiana typically doesn't have the most nil money. They typically shoot for 3-star recruits that they can further develop instead of landing 5 stars like Michigan or Ohio State. And of course, development of players is tougher nowadays in the day of the transfer portal where everybody's just in and out. But Cignetti's pretty optimistic, and he's optimistic by nature. And he says, look, I know we're going to put a different product out there. And he's very excited about it. And I share his optimism. I'm just not sure how many wins that translates to in year one. But I do think better days are ahead for the Indiana Hoosiers. Now, let's talk about Penn State football. They lost a legacy recruit in Michael Carroll, 6'6", 310-pound offensive lineman from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He just committed to Alabama, unfortunately. He was considering Michigan and Georgia as well. He's the number 9 ranked interior offensive lineman in the country, and the Nittany Lions have been after him for a while. They offered him last June. His father, Michael Carroll Sr., played for Penn State in the 1990s, if that rings a bell for you. But the news wasn't all bad. Of course, as we reported earlier, quarterback Darius Dixon, he is announcing that he's coming to Happy Valley, and he is a 4-star from California, and he's a top 15 prospect at his position. But Penn State promised to use him in a variety of different ways, and he's pretty excited about that. So that's why he's coming to Penn State. I don't know if he's going to return kicks. I don't know if he's going to throw him in at wide receiver every once in a while. But he said that was the deciding factor why he came to Penn State. They're going to get a little creative in how they use him. Let's talk about for a second the Minnesota Golden Gophers. We haven't talked about them a lot lately. Let's do that. We're big fans of PJ Fleck. His recruiting class of 2025. It's going awesome. PJ Fleck just had his annual Summer Splash recruiting event, bringing a bunch of potential recruits in, and he landed 11 players in 4 days. And now all of a sudden, Minnesota's recruiting class is now ranked in the top 20 in the country. This brings the class to 18 commits so far. So it's a big class and includes a couple of 4-stars. Right now, the Gophers, if they're in the top 20, that means they're recruiting at a higher rate or more out recruiting more notable programs like Oregon and Ole Miss and Tennessee right now. If you look at these such things, it's a good job for PJ Fleck and Minnesota. Hey, anytime we talk about recruiting here on Lockdown Big Ten, we give a shout out to our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire could feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockdowncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Always talk about daytime TV. It's not too good at ESPN and FS1 and Fox and all the talking heads screaming over each other. You got to turn the volume down, but I got another option for you. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming, without all the nonsense, without the competition and all that stuff on screen. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, which we've told you about before. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Middle of the week, you know what we like to do? Like to do our power rankings. So what we're going to do, it has to do with stadiums and noise and all that good stuff. It's coming up in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. Time for our power rankings here on Locked On Big Ten. Let's jump right in it. And what it is today, I'll tell you how I came across this. A national publication, I'll tell you right now, it was SI.com. They ranked the 10th loudest college football stadiums. So I've gathered this information. I'm going to go full screen with it so you can take a look at it. And I'm going to analyze some of this because I don't necessarily agree with this entire list. Here it is. There are 5 Big Ten teams on this top 10 list. Starts off with LSU's Tiger Stadium down in Death Valley. They call it Death Valley because it's so loud. Seats 102,000 people. And they have a lot of these, they have the highest listed decibel ranking ever. This one time got up to 130 decibels. Autzen Stadium for Oregon coming in at number 2. Smaller stadium, 60,000 people. but they'll hit a decibel level at 127. At number 3, they got Penn State's Beaver Stadium with 106,000 people, the highest decibel ever recorded there at 122. And then number 4, Florida's Ben Hill Griffins Stadium, as you know, is the Swamp. And that holds 88,000 people. The decibels hit 115,000. I once broadcast a game there back in the day. It is loud. It is loud. But now here at number 5, Texas A&M's Kyle Field, just a little more than 100,000 people there. They had the highest decibel level ever at 126, which is lower than the one recorded at Florida. So I'm presuming their list is like overall loud stadiums, but oh, by the way, here was the peak decibel level, because they're not going in like later on. We got Clemson. They got the highest, or actually Washington's Husky Stadium is the highest decibel level out of all of them, but they're ranked 9th. By the way, here's why things are loud at Texas A&M. And I've been to a game at Kyle Field, Texas A&M before. They got people there. They're student body. They have yell practice the night before. Yes, here's how we're going to yell. Here are the chants we're going to do. Here's what we're going to yell every time there's a first down. All that kind of stuff. Very organized noise. Meanwhile, Ohio State's Ohio Stadium coming up number 6 on their list. The old Horseshoe, holding a little more than 100,000 people, do not have a highest decibel ever recorded there. Reading. A little surprised by that. At number 7, Tennessee's Neyland Stadium, a little more than 100,000 people. They once reached a decibel level of 125. Clemson's Memorial Stadium, much smaller at 86,000. They come in at number 8, but they did hit almost 133, 132.8 decibels, the loudest ever recorded there at Clemson. And as I mentioned, at number 9, even though it's 9 on the list for overall noise and sound, according to SI, the 70,000 people there. Of course, they got the little short roof that overhangs each side, but doesn't go all the way across. They once reached a level of 133.6. That's the highest decibel level of any college football stadium that we know. And then rounding out the top 10, Wisconsin's Camp Randall. You know, when they get that jump around song going, 76,000 people jumping and yelling, decibels hit about 106. Hey, by the way, notice who is not on this list. The Big House. 107,600 people. They had, I guess, the highest decibel ranking there is 110. Look, maybe it's because it's kind of like a flat, low-angled bowl, and the sound is able to escape and doesn't bounce back in as much. But it's certainly not due to a lack of people, as Michigan is the biggest stadium in North America. So there you have it. And again, that was the loudest stadiums according to SI, and some detailed information along with that, 1 through 10. Hope you like that. We always do power rankings in the middle of the week, and that's what we have for you today. Pretty cool list, as a matter of fact. All right, so many ways for you to go ahead and reach me. You can interact with me on Twitter at TalkBig10, or X if you like to call it, TalkBig10 number 10, our website, talkbig10.com. And also, I'm looking forward to your comments on YouTube, whether it be about the stadium rankings for sound, maybe your stadium got left off, or your thoughts on Michigan and whether they're going to be really good or just kind of good this year. We had all summer to preview these, and we're going to do it as summer goes on. We'll be talking about every single team, planning their football season, what we think is going to happen. We got Big Ten Media Days coming up in July. So a lot of stuff on our plate. And then we'll keep an eye on everybody once they go into camp. So tomorrow we're going to talk about Ohio State and their quarterback room. And Aaron Nolan, he left. But then I guess he's coming back. We'll figure it all out and try and figure out what direction they're going with that crowded quarterback room there in Columbus. Before you go, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Lockdown Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Check out another episode as soon as we're done here. They're all there on our website, talkbig10number10.com. And also feel free to check out our friends on the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. Have fun with that as well. That'll do it. Again, some Buckeye talk, more recruiting talk. We'll have a peek at the weekend coming up TV-wise for Big Ten Classics. All that right here on Locked On Big Ten. Thanks for joining us. Can't wait to talk again tomorrow. I'm Craig Sheeman. See you then.